extinction, with more than 50% of the recognized 356 species of turtles and tortoises are threatened with extinction. So over half of our turtles and tortoises are being threatened today. Here in the state of Maine, we're not faring much better. In fact, we're above the average, with over 70% of Maine's native freshwater turtles are listed by the state as either endangered, threatened, or under special concern. So what would a world without turtles look like? And really, what did they do for us? Well, as we know, turtles are threatened. This is a landing turtle and is listed as on the state as endangered. We also know that turtles are underappreciated. This is an eastern box turtle. It also in the state of Maine is listed as endangered. We know that turtles are reptiles, and this is a painted turtle. And we know that they're common for right now. So their status is okay in the state of Maine. But we also know that turtles are timeless. They have been here since the start of animals walking on this earth. This is a musk turtle, and right now it's under special concern in the state. They're legendary. History goes way back and will inform us of all the legendary tales, folklore, and history that turtles have given us over the years. This is a spotted turtle. It is threatened in the state of Maine. They're environmentalists. These turtles will actually walk in, maybe invade your garden, eat your strawberries, and on the way out, on their other end, they will plant seeds as they go. They also will dig burrows and so on for other animals to hibernate and stay safe. This is a wood turtle. In the state of Maine, it's listed as special concern. And finally, they're scavengers. What would this world smell like if we didn't have our turtles helping us out in our freshwater lakes and ponds? Here's a common snapping turtle. And right now, here in the state of Maine, it's listed as common. So folklore, as I mentioned earlier, North American Native Americans believe that the turtle carries the world on its back, and when the earth shakes, it's because Mother Turtle is stretching. In China, the turtle is the only sacred animal. It represents wisdom, longevity, wealth, and the markings on its shells represent heaven, earth, and the universe. And in India, turtles represent the second incarnation of their god, Vishnu. Also, the turtle is depicted in many forms of art as carrying the entire world on its back. So what does 7 + 1 = 8? Well, in the state of Maine, we have 7 native turtles, 7 native freshwater turtles. We have 1 introduced species. We're not saying an invasive species, we're just saying introduced, because at this time, Inland Fisheries has not determined enough data on it to say that it is having a tremendous impact on population. They do know that it is having some, and we will address that in a little bit. But in total, we have 8 turtles that we will find in the state of Maine. So what are they, and who are they? Well, they're the eastern box turtle, the spotted turtle, the landing turtle, the common snapping turtle, the musk turtle, the eastern painted turtle, the wood turtle, and the red ear slider. A lot of people ask, what's the difference between a turtle and a tortoise? Well, the major difference between the two is that a tortoise dwells on land, while a turtle lives in water some or nearly all the time. So a quick overview, and I want to point out a few quick anatomy descriptions here that are going to play importance as we go on throughout. One is the carapace, which is the top protective shell. The plastron, which is located beneath the turtle, which is the under protective shell. And scutes. Scutes form all the way around the shell. You have your nostril scutes, your marginal scutes. You have several different, you have your vertebrae scutes. They all play an important role in protecting the turtle. So really, what type of eaters are turtles? Well, they're omnivores, which means they eat both plants and animals. They're carnivores, which means they strictly eat on flesh. And they're herbivores, meaning that they primarily food source is plant-based. So here is our first turtle of this evening. This is Carolina. Her name is Carolina. She is a wildlife ambassador at Chilwaukee. The story behind her is that she was found and then given to Chilwaukee. DNA testing indicates, though, she is not a native eastern box turtle here in the state of Maine. So that is why she's an ambassador. They do not want to release her back into the wild so that they can start to intermingle her DNA with the possibility of any native DNA. But they happen to be Maine's rarest reptile, but they are found primarily in the southwestern part of Maine. In fact, it's more likely that Maine is the northern reach of their territory. They're not going to much further north than this. And so that may be why they're only limited to the southwest part of the state. They're a woodland species, which means that they're going to spend the majority of their time in the woods. They have an 8-inch carapace, which, remember, that's the top shell. And here are two eastern box turtles. One is a male and one is a female. And if we were together, I would ask you to guess, but I'm going to let you know that the male is the one on the right. So males are larger, thicker tails, red eyes, short, curved claws on the hind legs, and concave plastum. Whereas the females have yellow-brown eyes, long, straight claws, and convex plastum. They get their name box turtle because they are able to completely close their shell. But you know, they have soft shells up until age 7, which makes them a great susceptibility to being prey for raccoons and skunks and dogs and cats up until age 7. But if they manage to make it beyond age 7 and their shell has hardened up, and they're not impacted by habitat fragmentation or loss or global warming, they can live up to 100 years in the wild. So the mating season for our eastern box turtle usually starts from spring to October. And during the courtship, males will circulate around the female and bite their shells and produce a pulsating effect using their throats. It's a mating dance, if you like. But females can store and use sperm up to fertilization of eggs during a period of 4 years. And when they're ready to lay eggs, they will lay somewhere between 3 to 8 eggs from May to June or July in a nest in the sand incubation period will last about 3 months. So once the eggs are laid, it will take about 3 months before we start to see little turtles. Again, they're omnivores, eating other animals and plants. Their diet consists of slugs or worms, insects, salamanders, fish, birds, frogs, eggs, fungi, berries, and roots. But this is an important fact. They only occupy a territory of 750 feet in diameter. They're not aggressive. They won't go after another eastern box turtle walking through their territory, but it's important. So many of us want to pick up a turtle and bring it home because we think we're doing the right thing. And we're not, because once you remove it from that 750-foot diameter territory that was born and raised in and has all the nutrition that it needs, it will probably end up perishing and a very slow death to begin. So it's important to always remember, if you see them there, leave them there. So a good question that was asked a lot about in the frogs, and I'm going to bring it over into the turtles, is really, where did they hibernate and how did they do it? So as temperature falls in the autumn, they enter into a hibernation, usually starting in October or November, and they will burrow in loose soil, mud, or abandoned burrows. As the soil temperature drops with the coming of the winter seasons, the turtles start to dig deeper and deeper into their winter homes. So here's a fun fact. In hot weather, they will use their saliva to keep their heads and their front legs cool. and they will wee on their back legs to keep them cool. So here's our first polling question that we have for this evening. We're going to call it the shell game. And on average, how many bone plates make up a turtle's carapace? Is it A, 1, B, 50, C, 100? Okay, excellent. 76% of you got it correct. They are made up of 50 different bone plates that make up the turtle's carapace. So here's a spotted turtle. Okay, this young male's name is Percy. Percy is now a wildlife ambassador for the Center for Wildlife and is being raised under their care because Percy was poached here in the state of Maine, transferred to the state of Connecticut for the purpose of pet trade, for the pet trade industry. It was being utilized to impregnate other female spotted turtles, and in turn, the baby turtles were then sold in the pet trade industry. Percy was eventually found and returned back to the state of Maine, where it's living out its life and teaching about not only the detriment of pet trade industry, but poaching in general. So our spotted turtles are found in marshy meadows, swamps, bogs, small ponds, ditches, and shallow bodies of water. And primarily where you're going to find a spotted turtle is in the York or Cumberland counties, where a separate population occurring along the coast and sometimes on the interior of central Maine, as far north as Farmington and Bangor. But they're only about 5 to 6 inches in length. They're omnivores. And their lifespan in the wild is about 25 to 30 years. And they happen to be Maine's only turtle with a distinct yellow spots on a smooth, low black carapace. I happen to think they're the most beautiful turtles that we have. Some may argue that the painted turtle might be a close first or second, but I happen to have a bias for this one. They reach sexual maturity is reached about 7 to 10 years. So it's going to take about 7 to 10 years for them to be able to reproduce. Their mating season is usually between March to May. And when they do lay eggs, they will lay anywhere from 3 to 6 oval-shaped eggs with thin, flexible shells. Again, for their hibernation, they will typically enter hibernation in mid-October. They will hibernate in shallow water in mud or muskrat burrows or lodges. These sites are deep enough to not freeze completely, but are shallow enough to do a quick thaw in the spring. And so here's a little fun fact about spotted turtles. After laying her eggs, as most turtles do, she will go one step further in disguising the nest. She will smooth the dirt by dragging her body over the ground. So again, shell question number 2. Pick the spotted turtle shell or the carapace. Is it A or is it B? Excellent. I'm not sure what gave it away, but everybody got it right. And I will say that B is a musk turtle shell. So here's a blanding turtle. This young lady does not have a name, but she was found as far north as the Prescott area. She was found by the head herpetologist for the state of Maine. And he knew that she should not have been up that far north. And she also had a very friendly personality, which is also an indicator that she was probably being raised as a pet. But our blanding turtles are semi-aquatic. They're isolated in coves, weedy bays, and further inland in shallow marshy water areas and pools. Higher populations are found in the southern and central York, with a few locations in Cumberland County. So if you can imagine, she was up in the county and really her home is York or Cumberland, which simply means that somebody did find her, somebody picked her up and took her up there. She's a medium size, between 7 and 9 inches. This turtle also at the time had eggs in her. An omnivore, in the wild, their diet consists of crustaceans, snails, insects, berries, and grasses. They can live to be 75 to 80, and it's not unusual for them to be found to be living over 100 years old. The giveaway for identification is their yellow underside of their neck, located right there. So they reach sexual maturity and occurs at around 15 to 20 years. So if they're living to 80, that gives them a good maybe 60, 80 years to reproduce. But it will take them that long to be able to reach sexual maturity. Their mating season usually occurs from May to July in the water. And they will walk, the females will walk 1 to 1.5 miles, returning to the same site year after year and lay anywhere from 3 to 17 eggs. So in their hibernation, they will begin hibernating when the water temperature falls below 42 degrees, anywhere between 42 and 55 degrees Fahrenheit. And it will hibernate in mud or debris, either in or near the water. So they're also known as a semi-box turtle. Its hinged plastron allows the turtle to close the front half of the shell tightly, but still leaving exposed back legs. Here is the shell game number 3. Is this a view of a carapace or plastron? It is the plastron. It's the underbelly. The carapace would be the top. Here is a common musk turtle. Little is known of this musk turtle. I happened to be at the Maine Wildlife Park when this turtle was being delivered just 2 or 3 days before I got there. So little was known about the musk turtle here in this particular case. But if you're interested, and once we're able to get back into our facilities, this is a must-see at the Maine Wildlife Park in Gray. So they are strictly aquatic, preferring permanent bodies of water, but they're often found walking along the bottom of the water, rather than swimming. And we're going to find out why in just a little bit. Their northern range is mainly in the coastal regions, and they're the smallest of Maine's turtles, probably somewhere between less than 5 inches in length. The carnivores, meaning that these are one of those that are going to be eating decaying flesh, small fish, aquatic insects, snails, and freshwater clams. They will live anywhere between 30 to 50 years in the wild. And they have barbels, sensory organs that are located on the chin and underside of their neck. Let me point out where they are. There's one, there's the other. Let me tell you the importance. Remember when I said that they will be found walking on the bottom and not swimming? Well, literally what they're doing is they're searching for prey, and they're using these barbels as sensory organs to find that particular insect, that small snail or freshwater clam, and so that's what they're doing. There is another turtle that we're going to talk about shortly that has the same concept, and that's our common snapping turtle. So again, they have an extended breeding season, April through October. Female turtles reach sexual maturity somewhere between 9 to 10 years, and males anywhere from 3 to 4. Females briefly leave the water in June to lay somewhere between 3 to 9 eggs. So in the fall, when the water temperature drops below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, they will begin the search for a place to hibernate, and within a few inches of water, a few inches under the mud in shallow water. So the common nickname for a stink pot is the common nickname is stink pot, because of their ability to expel a rather repulsive, musty scent from the glands of its plastron and when disturbed. Shell game number 4, true or false? Musk turtles have a smaller plastron than most other turtles, exposing more skin around their plastron. True. Very similar to the same plastron that you may find on a snapping turtle as well. So speaking of snapping turtles, here's a common snapping turtle. Again, this is a nameless one because the story behind this one is a positive one. This particular snapping turtle was hit by a car, was brought to the Center for Wildlife in York, was rehabilitated, had its carapace sealed up, and is being released, or was released, back into the wild. But for us, they're found mostly in marsh, streams, or lakes, and occasionally in brackish water. They're throughout Maine except for the extreme north or northwestern highlands. And they happen to be Maine's largest turtle, somewhere averaging around 17 pounds. Some are much heavier than that, but on the average, it's about 17 pounds, and the carapace is about 18 inches long. They're omnivores, aquatic invertebrates, decaying flesh, freshly shoots of cattails and pickle reeds. I found that very interesting, that's what they prefer to, that's their preferred diet. They can live up to 30 years in the wild. And the females reach sexual maturity somewhere around 11 to 16 years. And for males, anywhere between 5 to 7 years. And here's an unbelievable fact, that the females will actually travel in June between 0.5 to 2 miles to nest in sandy gravel road and soil. As I had mentioned, I live in Addison, Maine, which is way up north by Machias. And I was happened to driving on US 1, and there was a snapping turtle that had come out. I was concerned it was going to try to attempt to cross the road. When I stopped and looked at her, she was laying eggs. She did the exact same thing that this is saying. She crawled up from the pond, up a very steep embankment. She got to the bank of the road, and she laid her eggs. Leaving her undisturbed for a while, she turned around and she headed right back. Now, the nice thing about it is the neighbor saw me stop, came out, asked what I was doing, told him what I was doing, and he actually made a bright pink block that will kind of warn people not to drive their cars over that area. So keep your fingers crossed. In a couple months, we'll have some little baby snapping turtles. And they will usually lay between 20 to 40 eggs. And these are hatched by late summer. I have a number, 20%. It's estimated that even if they lay somewhere between 20 to 40 eggs, only 20%, even under the best conditions and environments, are going to hatch and become turtles. So the percentage is quite small. They lay a high number. But if you could imagine it going back to, say, the spotted turtle or the musk turtle, with a lower percentage of eggs being laid, and that they have the same percentage, where there's not many turtles being reproduced and repopulating their population. So this is an important fact. When the turtles hibernate, they rely on stored energy and uptake oxygen from the pond water by moving it across their body surfaces that are flush with blood vessels. In this way, they can get the oxygen to support their minimum needs without using their lungs. All turtles have lungs. So turtles, and somebody will say, well, how can you see a turtle moving underwater in the ice or whatever? But it needs to have that open area. It needs to have areas where it can get it. And primarily, turtles have one very vascular area, and that happens to be their rear end or their butts. That is where they will extend a lot of blood vessels, and that's where they will draw the oxygen from. We talked a little bit about it with the frogs last week, and I did mention the same thing, that some frogs will do the same thing, but for the turtles that are making their home under the water, not buried on the shorelines or in the forest, they are using this technique to stay alive. So incubation period is also plays a very important role. Sex is determined by an early development. What they're saying is the higher temperature, outside air temperature that will be reached, the more likely they're going to have a female group of turtles. They also have made studies where the turtles laid closest to the top will also come out as females. Shell game number 5. Whose carapace is this? Is it A, a common musk turtle? Is it B, a common snapping turtle, or is it the C, the painted turtle? Very good. It happens to be a common snapping turtle. And one quick way to be able to determine that is that its scutes on the back are a little jagged, a little rough on the tail end of the turtle. They're like little jaggers, and that's one of the ways that you can do it. The other turtle that will have something like this, but not as pronounced, is the wood turtle. Here's an eastern painted turtle. Now, this young lady is known as Lotus. Lotus is a wildlife ambassador for the Center for Wildlife in York. She was found in an abandoned house in a bucket of black water. With no place to haul out, her shell became deformed and developed shell rot. She is making a full recovery, but I'm also told by her caretakers she has one sassy attitude. So she is one sassy lady, but she is making a full recovery after being found there. But as you can see from this photo, there is some deformity around her shells. But they do prefer quiet, shallow ponds, marsh, bogs, slow and moving streams. They're found throughout most of the state. Their carapace can average up to 7 inches long. There are many carnivores eating insects and snails, vegetation, and even decaying flesh. In the wild, they can live up to 25 to 30 years. They're known as the sun turtle. These are the turtles that you see basking on the logs, and they're doing it for 2 reasons. One, they're drawing vitamin from the sun, but the second most important reason is the sun is also killing any parasites that the turtles may have picked up. And by them laying in the sun for 5 to 6, 7, 8 hours, they're literally getting rid of the parasites that they find on themselves. They mate in spring or fall. Sexual maturity is usually reached in males around 4, in females anywhere from 6 to 7. And they will lay anywhere between 5 and 11 eggs in June or July, late afternoon or evening, and they're white elliptical in shape, and they incubate for 65 days. So as I mentioned, painted turtles will spend most of their hibernation in ponds and slow-moving fresh water where the sheet of ice doesn't stop them. It only slows them down. Even in the northern parts of their range, adults will overwinter under ice, sometimes buried up to 17 inches in the mud beneath the water. Sometimes when a pond freezes, you can actually see the turtles sitting on the bottom. Here's a little fun fact about painted turtles. A male will initiate courtship with a female by stroking her face with the front claws. Shell game number 6. Can you determine the age of a turtle by counting the rings on its scutes? Is it A, yes, B, no, C, maybe? The maybes have it. And here's the reason maybe. The rings around their bone plates or their scutes is also can be determined by how well they ate that particular year. So that could be a little misleading in the proper count of determining that. If they're larger and more pronounced, that was a good year for them. If they're smaller, they suffered a little bit. It is a way to determine. It's a way but you cannot be 100% certain. Yes, this turtle is 64 years old because I counted every ring on it. There's other variable factors that need to be based on that decision. So you could say this turtle is approximately 65 years old, and you would be correct. So here's a wood turtle named Woody. This is a wood turtle that is being housed at the Maine Wildlife Park. As you can notice, that Woody is missing both front limbs. But they spend most of their time in uplands as well as rivers and streams, and are mostly considered terrestrial, which means they live in the woods. Throughout Maine, they have been observed at any major river drainage. Their sculptured carapace length is 5.5 to 10 inches long with a width of 4 to 9. They actually, their scutes or their carapace, it builds up on layers. It looks like a little pyramid when you see them. Here's a little example of it. They're omnivores, many different plants and animals. They'll eat many different plants and animal foods. They can live up to 40 years in the wild. They're highly intelligent. Can't say enough things. People that have raised them and studied them have determined that they can literally work their way through a maze very comparable to the same way that a rat will work its way through its maze to find either water or food. Those that have raised it, have been caretakers for them, have already said that they can determine whether the food is kept in the kitchen and the water is kept in the bathroom, so they can know to distinguish between the two of them. In the state of Maine, they're under special concern right now because they are also known and prized very heavily by the pet trade industry. They are known as old redlegs here in the state of Maine. And their sexual maturity is usually between 11 and 12 years, with mating occurring throughout the year, but it peaks in the fall. They prefer sandy gravel areas throughout June and mid-July, 5 to 12 off-white eggs, elliptical in shape, 1 to 2 inches. And here's what they'll do when they want to hibernate. So November through February or March is spent in hibernation, either underwater at depths of about 3 feet or so, or in muddy burrows, or in rest under logs or roots, in pools, in muskrat nests, or beaver lodges, or even along streams and banks under the forming ice. And again, I told you they were highly intelligent. This is a very, very, very tricky hunter. They will literally stomp the ground with alternating hits of their left and right front foot. They say this behavior is thought to mimic the sound of rain, causing earthworms to rise to the surface and quickly becoming prey. And you can see how devastating it is. In that particular case with Woody, it lost both its front limbs because they're contributing it either to raccoon or skunk, but I think they were also leaning heavily towards the fact that people were allowing their dogs to run freely in this particular area. And when the dogs came up on Woody, they just literally did the legs. So here's shell game number 7, and this is called Name That Protein. So turtles have hard scutes and are overlapping pieces of keratin. Keratin is the same protein substance found in your A, bones, B, fingernails, C, teeth. Yes, it is in your fingernails. So here's red ear slider. This is our invasive species. Many of us recall the fact that at my age as a child, we would go into the 5 and 10 dime stores and we would purchase a turtle with a little plastic container with another little plastic palm tree in it, and we would raise them for a week, a month, maybe a little bit longer, and then we would turn around and release them back into the wild with the hopes that they would live. But what happens is right now they're being considered an introduced species, that people that at one time were able to, when they were able to purchase them, would do the exact same thing as I described. For right now, you'll find them live in ponds, lakes, marshes, slow-moving rivers that have soft, muddy bottoms. They are originally from the south, but you can now find them in southern Maine. And males are slightly smaller than females. An adult carapace will range anywhere from 5 to 11 inches long. They're in competition with our native species. They can live up to 20 years in the wild. And what I want to point out here before we do anything, and let me see, I'm going to go back real quick here. The side of the face, if you look at this, right behind the ear, you're going to see a red streak. This is a distinguishing difference, and this is how you'll be able to tell them away from a painted turtle. The painted turtles will not have that, and they almost look similar. So if you do see that distinguished red streak, then you know you got you're looking at a red ear slider, where it gets its name. Its breeding season lasts from late spring to early summer. Its courtship and mating between March and July, usually taking place underwater. And it will lay anywhere between 20 to 30 oval soft-shelled eggs. So they actually brumate. Well, they become less active. They're actually starting to go into a torpor or a little bit of a hibernation. They do occasionally rise to the surface for food or air. Most sliders spend most of the winter months in mud at the bottom of the ponds or shallow lakes. And here's a fun fact about turtles. Do turtles fart? Turtles do fart, and farts can range in size and sound just like humans. Probably not as loud, but they can be just as pungent. So here's a bonus question. Bonus question number 8. Name that turtle that laid this egg. Is it A, spotted turtle, B, snapping turtle, C, wood turtle? The answer is snapping turtle. So again, 70% of our turtles here in the state of Maine are in some form of special concern. A lot of it has to do with habitat fragmentation and loss. The best way I can describe habitat fragmentation is if you have a vernal pool, which is a pool in which they may go to live, or a pond where they are living, and someone decides someday that they want to put a road right between the two and divide the pond directly in half and build a road. That's fragmentation. Habitat loss is if they came in with bulldozers and decided that they wanted to completely eliminate the pond or the vernal pool. So being the fact that a majority of our turtles that we talked about this evening are found in the southern region of the state, with building going on and habitat loss occurring more frequently than it does in the northern part, that is one of the reasons you see such a high percentage of concern. Climate change will always have an impact on it. Right now up here, we're all experiencing the drought in the state of Maine, except I think some of you may have gotten some very heavy rain. Up here, we didn't. We haven't seen it. And so what's happening is a lot of the waters are drying up. And if the water isn't drying up, it's heating up. And that's having an adverse effect. Roadkill still plays a very important factor in being a big threat, and also good intentions. I really would like to concentrate on roadkill and good intentions to close out this presentation. So roadkill, and if those that are familiar with iNaturalist, back in 2019, there's a group of individuals that are trained to be able to go out and identify roadkill and take it back. It's a seminar that the inland fishery people put on. They will literally train volunteers to go out and determine it. Last year in 2019, 178 turtles were identified. Of that, 99 of them were painted turtles. 71 of them were snapping turtles. 3 were common musk turtles. 3 were blanding turtles. 1 was a common box turtle. 1 was a wood turtle. And 1 was a spotted turtle, making up a total of 178. Those are the only ones that were identified. There's not the ones that were not identified. And here's an example of good intentions gone wrong. This is a turtle that is now being housed at the Maine Wildlife Park in Gray. This turtle's name does have a name. It's called Snappy. Snappy, initially, what was a couple people were on their dirt bikes. They came up over a hill. They came down, and there was Snappy in the middle of the road. They had thought they had injured it. And so their good intentions were immediately to take it home and nurse it back to health. Well, what they did in the meantime, and what they did over the next 17 years, or 12 years, then the next 12 years, was to have Snappy be fed a diet of hot dogs, sit on the couch and watch TV, never introduce it to water, never introduce it to its proper diet, and then the caretaker took it to bed with her every evening. It wasn't until after 12 years that the turtle was confiscated and returned to the Maine Wildlife Park, where I'm happy to say her weight is getting better, her diet is greatly improved, and she has been introduced to water. So, in conclusion, I'd like to say, how can we help? Well, it's most importantly, it's what I will preach morning, noon, and night. If you see them there, leave them there. Become a citizen science in the state of Maine under their Maine Amphibian and Reptile Atlas project. It's called MARAP. You can easily find it. It's MARAP, M-A-R-A-P. Just go to the Maine government, Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, and look it up. This will allow you to become a citizen scientist. This will allow you to feel good about what you do, because when you go out there and you see a species, take a photograph of it with your iPhone or your camera. Then fill out a document that they have where it was, some other important information, and submit it back into the state. The state then compiles a massive database that will identify the health of the turtles and where they're being located and found. Also, support your local wildlife rehabilitation centers. I didn't want to list them all here, but again, Inland Fisheries and Wildlife is a great resource. If you happen to see or find an injured turtle and you need to find a location to where you want to take it back to, they will tell you where it is. They will go into great detail to tell you what exactly that wildlife rehabilitation can and cannot do. And so it will help you find a home for that injured turtle. Also, you can become more active. You can help a turtle cross the road by moving it off the road in the same direction it was headed. And there's also, believe it or not, it goes hand in hand with the roadkill. There's a seminar put on by Inland Fisheries on how to help turtles to safely cross Maine roads. The training is free, but registration is required. And you have to contact the Maine Audubon Conservation Assistance, Hannah, and then their instructors coming from Inland Fisheries. So just keep in mind that our turtles are a general bridge between us and the wild. And if you dream of turtles tonight, here's a little explanation of what you may be dreaming about. A painted turtle, you're being asked to explore your artistic side. A snapping turtle, you must pursue an opportunity that is before you aggressively. If you dream of a box turtle, it is a reminder you cannot hide from within yourself. And if you dream of a red air slider, it's an omen. Someone is over dramatizing an issue. Thank you.